Hey guys, Nicky here with a new frequently asked questions video. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and with the expansion out, there's been a ton of changes and a ton of questions as a result. I can put out these videos a lot quicker if I have to, in order to answer as many questions as possible. So if you have a good question and I didn't address it, please leave your question in the comments, and I'll try to get to it in the next video. With that said, let's get into the first question. So the question is, why do you recommend Force and Air Sigils in your guides instead of Night like you used to? Well, the answer is that previously, the main endgame content was dungeons and fractals. Most of the dungeons were nighttime, and around half of the fractals were too. So it made sense to recommend Night Sigil as your main weapon set because most of the instances you played in were nighttime. However, with dungeons no longer a part of the current and future quote-unquote endgame, we are left with fractals and soon raids. Since most of the fractals are daytime, and the devs have confirmed that the raids will be daytime, it makes the most sense to recommend the best daytime weapon set as your main set. Many players will also only have one set of ascended weapons, and they can't min-max, and as a result of that, they need their one ascended weapon set to be as widely applicable as possible. I would hate to recommend someone put sigils on their weapons that won't function in raids, so Night Sigil is no longer meta in my opinion, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. So the question is, what is the best 5-man party comp now? Well, this question used to be really easy, and now it's actually kind of hard. The reason is that fractal instabilities and scaling upset the balance. Fractal scaling with toughness is very intense, and the mobs gain so much toughness as you get past level 60 that it means that direct damage builds get worse and worse, and condi damage gets better and better. So, well, ignoring the instabilities for a moment, a group that would be meta in the 50s is definitely different from a group that would be meta in the 80s. In the 50s, you might want a PS Warrior, a Chronomancer, a Dragon Hunter, a Revenant, and an Ellie. In the 80s, you might want a PS Warrior, a Condi Guard, 2 Condi Engies, and a Condi Reaper. So completely different, even for the same fractal shard. Then you have to factor in the instabilities where boon stripping becomes important, or some of the instabilities that strip boons from a player, so that longer lasting might stacks that are infrequently applied are much worse than might stacks with short durations that get reapplied frequently. So all in all, the quote-unquote meta comp is no longer a set-in-stone concept thanks to fractal scaling and instabilities, and your team should have to think about what you're going to run with at each different fractal, both accounting for the level of the fractal and the instabilities that you're going to have to face. Question is, which Maguma masteries should I prioritize? The absolute most important mastery to get is Updraft Gliding. That is the one mastery that we know for a fact the devs have confirmed will be required for raids. Also, it will allow you to reach more hero points and content than any other mastery. The second mastery worth getting is New Hawk Wallows, because once you have those unlocked, you're able to really reach 95% of the content. And I would suggest Bouncing Mushrooms third. And then once you have Bouncing Mushrooms, Updraft Gliding, and New Hawk Wallows, you're pretty much good to go, and everything after that is icing on the cake. Next question is the Revenant any good, and what is its role? The short answer is it's very good, and the role is whatever you need it to be since it's so versatile. The long answer is that the Revenant is so good because it combines very high personal DPS with fantastic support options that teams actually want. That's a winning combo that many other professions do not have, looking over at you there, Necromancer and Thief. It would be hard to convince me that I didn't want a Revenant in every group I make, and the only possible arguments would hinge around the extra toughness that mobs get at high-level fractals, making me not want to have super high direct damage and more of a condition damage setup. However, the Revenant can do so much that you can be trapped into trying to do too much or doing things you really don't need. I've seen a ton of kind of mediocre Revenant builds posted to forums and all over YouTube that don't really understand the class very well and make a lot of rather bizarre recommendations. For starters, Revenants can make a lot of might. but they can't really make might more than a PS warrior. A PS warrior can make between 18 to 25 might for the whole party in an organized group. A Revenant can make 4 to 5 might passively from traits without ever having to use Facet of Strength. And between the two of those, that's well more than enough to top off your party. So why do so many people tell you to use Strength Runes and Camp Herald and Facet of Strength on your Revenant to pump out might? Those might be okay ideas if you don't have a warrior in your group, but let's face it, most organized groups will have a warrior. The people who suggest that fail to understand that just because a Rev can make a lot of might stacks doesn't mean a Revenant should make a lot of might stacks. You have to consider what you give up to achieve those might stacks. A Revenant has to sacrifice a ton of personal DPS to be the team might generator. A warrior does not. The Revenant has to give up maintaining other boons in that the party might want, like regen, fury, or 50% boon duration, in order to become a dedicated might bot. These are all big sacrifices. If you have a warrior in your party already, why would you make those sacrifices? By the same token, for a similar example, a Revenant can make perma protection for its party. But it gives up even more... But to do that, it gives up even more than it gives up to be a might bot. It's much less of a sacrifice for the Guardian in the group to camp hammer than it is for the Revenant to be a prot bot. A Revenant gives up something like 30% of its DPS or more to become a prot bot and all the rest of its utility. A Guardian might give up, say, 10% of its DPS to become a hammer bot, but it's actually adding utility to do that. So again, it's another example of something that the Rev can do, but it doesn't mean the Rev should do. So what should a Revenant be doing? Revenant is the best class in the business at Fury generation, and Revenant should be the team's primary Fury creator. Revenant can do that easily, and it comes with no loss of DPS or utility. The Revenant boon duration buff is absolutely insane in combination with a Mesmer using quickness skills. The Revenant can grant permanent regeneration to the entire group easier than anyone. And the Revenant can do these things without hurting his or her top level DPS. So all in all, the Revenant has a lot of tools, but if you use them wisely, and don't use the wrong tools for the wrong job, and don't use a tool that's going to crush your DPS if it isn't going to help your party a lot, you'll be in much better shape. So that is it for this episode of Frequently Asked Questions Heart of Thorns Edition. I am absolutely sure that when raids launch in the next couple days, there'll be tons more questions, and I will hopefully do my best to have tons more answers for you. Thank you guys for watching, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and maybe you'll find your question in the next episode. Thank you guys. Have a great day.